Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 740. Is it already? Wow, that would be fast. Of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Do. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Thursday, September 18th, 2025. And I'm looking out my window and it's looking a little gray here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, he, Mr. Beaver A. And not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Peppermaster, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health doing today? Mine is doing okay, I have to admit. Had a rehearsal last night, first dance rehearsal. Was not feeling good going into it. Again, sort of slow and dragging like the night before. And it was hard to get me out of the house, to get me on the bus, to get me to the rehearsal. But once I was there and I started dancing, which is like my favorite thing in the world, it all went away. And the the rehearsal seemed to go by really fast. I was expecting it to be longer, so I don't know if we either picked it up really quickly and we were let go early, or whether or not it was just that the time flew by. But it was a lot of fun. It's a good group. Already, I can see that there's going to be lots of laughs and lots of getting along and making new friends and that type of stuff. And there's already trust. There's almost like an inherent or implicit trust between a lot of us, even though a lot of us haven't like fully met yet or had like long conversations. But uh, when you're doing scenes, you can always see that by how close people are standing to each other and how willing they are to actually interact with each other, like physically, even like, put a hand on the shoulder, or like, like, hey, how you doing? Or something like that, reach out and shake a hand in a scene. And it seems that nobody has any reservations about actually getting into other people's personal space in the course of doing a scene. Sometimes, you'll see that as you start rehearsing, there's distance, and as you get to know each other and form some type of bond, you know, with as people, working on the same project, then all of a sudden that closeness starts to happen more and more, and the scenes get richer. But we seem to have that energy right from the get go, which means if we don't have to work up to it, means we have more time to work on it as we actually are doing it, and that will make the show much better, because we will look like, if there's anybody that are friends in the show, we or colleagues, well, they will look like they actually are, because they've been able to work on that and make that look natural. So I have to say, where the first vocal night, we had a couple of moments where you sort of had that harmonious sound that was all sort of like on that one level, and you go, "Ooh, that's nice." And like I said, the dance portion yesterday seemed to go very well, particularly since we were pretty much all guys in this number, and at the community theater level, we're not necessarily all known to be decent dancers. So the level is good. There's a lot of people who are relatively new to musicals in this show, and uh, you couldn't tell by the way that they're picking up the choreography. So yeah, 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 yeah. I'm pretty happy. Pretty happy. It looks like we've got something good on our hands. So those of you who are pondering getting tickets or who have gotten tickets already, you might be in for a little treat. I think. All right, let's look into the magic monitor and see who is with us this morning. We have Kit Elaine saying, "Good morning, everyone. Such a keener here first." We have Kit Uncover saying morning and celebrating the fact that we have now hit 24,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. Woohoo! Thank you so much, everybody who is joining. We really appreciate it. It means the world to us. Then we have Kit Argosi Acres here saying, "Good morning, kits and cubs. Lovely to see you, and that it is indeed another lovely September day." We have Hyper T 007 here saying, "Bom dia a todas pessoas. Como estão to-" Hold on, no, let me try that. "Bom dia a todas pessoas. Como estão todos hoy?" I'm going to guess that's good day, all you people, or to all the people. How are you doing today? Is what I will guess. That and just basing that on my French. All right, let's see who else we have. We have hey Kid Chris. Hey there. Nice to see you. Good morning to you too. Who else do we have here in the chat? Kitlin M singing good morning, good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning to you. I think she just wanted me to sing. We have Kid James here. Hey, friend, how you doing? Nice to see you. Glad you can join us this morning. Who else do we have? Kit Kat. I love saying it. Kit Kat W saying morning to everyone. And in the chat as well, we have Kit Nona Carol saying good morning, and Kit Grace saying, "Oops, late. Good morning." Nah, you're not late. You arrived precisely when you intended to. We have Kit Swanky Frankie here saying morning, and yeah, yeah, I know. We talk about that. Well, we'll touch on that a little bit. Um, the whole first they came for the comedians. It seems that ABC News has canceled Jimmy Kimmel because I guess somebody's fifis got hurt that he wasn't deferential enough. Um, he suggested before information came out that it could also be possible that the assassin came from the MAGA side. And while the MAGA side was saying it's definitely from the left before there was any information out there, it seems that saying that was okay, but saying, well, have you considered might be one of yours was not. And the FCC gave him a document to read as some type of apology, and he said, fuck no, I ain't reading that. And he's been pulled off the air indefinitely, and now there are investigations and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, the guy on Fox News who said that, we should just probably get rid of homeless people with lethal injection, well, he just got to say, oops, sorry, I didn't really mean that. And he's still on air. Yeah. Welcome to America. Amerika. It's happening, and it's happening fast. The dominoes are really, really happening fast. Um, it's looking like if there are elections at the midterms, they're going to be rather symbolic and theatrical and for show. At the speed this is going. We have Kit Jenny saying, good morning to you. Ha, see what I did there? We have Miss with us. Hey, Kit Miss. Hello. Lovely to see you. And hello to the whole family. Hope Mateo is feeling better. Oh, Mateo is here. Hey, Mateo. How are you, my friend? I hope you're feeling a little better. I heard that, you know, you haven't been feeling like yourself lately. So I'm giving you a big hug and hoping that you will be as good as usual soon so that you can go back to school and see your friends and learn lots of stuff. All right. But hello. Thank you. It's nice that you're here. All right. Who else do we have with us today? Uh Kit. I think I said Kit Swanky Frankie before, but if I haven't, good morning to you. And who else do we have? Kit PNC Bio is here. Uh, I'm not sure what fancy refers to, but he's saying fancy. So I will assume that it refers to my choice of clothing today, and I will say thank you. I'm so vain. I probably think that fancy's about me. All right. Uh, I'm more of an I'm so fancy kind of beaver. All right. Let's see. Kits and cubs. There is a lot going on. But uh, we got the kibble thing. I mean, it's it's well, it's concern. It's more than concerning. It's downright frightening. Uh, but I don't know what I don't know what what do you do as citizens of another country as you see stuff like that happening? I mean, you do the best to try to make sure, hell no, that's not going to happen in ours. Uh, but it's not like we can go down to the United States and do anything to change it. And I mean, you know, I guess we could turn around and say, okay, we're imposing sanctions on the United States, but that probably won't help us very much, considering everything the United States is doing to us, and you know the differences in our individual, our respective political weights. I'm There's a helpless feeling with regard to that, seeing that happen, seeing how fast the decline is happening, um, and living right next door and not being able to do really anything concrete other than saying, "Oh my god, that's terrible," and maybe, hosting a local protest, and like I said, doing whatever we can to make sure that that type of, vibe doesn't come up here. But there there's like a morbid fascination coupled with some hopelessness and some resignation that that's just where the United States has decided it's going, and unless there's some major pushback internally somehow, that scares the people who are trying to do this. Uh, and down we go, and down we go. But yeah, there are, like in almost every authoritarian regime, uh, comedians and satirists are not appreciated whatsoever because for some reason authoritarians, the common trait is that they all seem to have prosciutto thin skin and definitely don't like being laughed at or mocked or parodied or satirized or criticized or looked at analytically if it's for any other purposes than adulation at all. And then one by one start taking out the people who do that. So yeah, it seems that not only was Kimmel um, punished for doing something everybody else was doing, speculating about the potential political leanings of the assassin before there was any information out. Uh, but he got singled out for special treatment here. Not only did the FCC give him words to put in his mouth and say, "You say this or else," and did not comply or obey in advance, but now it seems that at least for one night, the time slot occupied by Jimmy Kimmel will be dedicated to for 1 hour tribute to Charlie Kirk type special. So not only did they remove a voice that they were not pleased with just because they could. So basically, again, killing the chicken in order to scare the monkeys, as the Chinese proverb goes. Uh, but here in its place, at least for one night, we're going to just give you 1 hour of propaganda. I, it's not good. It's not good, DAMFAM. It's not good. Uh, but America, what a country, right? Uh, back home, well, actually, before I get into it here, back home, yesterday for the DAMFAM who were watching us on YouTube because tech hates me, for some reason, the show just stopped broadcasting at some point after I finished the second section of the show, and right before I got into the bit where I was talking about Christopher Freeland. On every other platform, we were broadcasting the show broadcast to the end, uh, but not on YouTube. So, if you go to yesterday's show, there is a link I put in the episode description that will bring you to uh, our Facebook page, our original home, where yesterday's show is there in full. If you wanted to catch the end and missed it, I did think of repeating the stuff I said about Christopher Freeland and the Canadians Who Make Us Proud section in this show. But then again, for those who are listening in podcast version, who will have the full show, um, it would be a little repetitive, so, what I will do is, for those who did want to see the end, just direct you to the Facebook page, and you can, again, access it, via if you have Facebook, of course, via the YouTube page for yesterday's show. The links are there, and, what I'm hoping will happen is that over the course of the weekend at some time, Mr. Grizzly will be able to take the full show, either that we have here, still stored in Restream and be able to substitute the show within the current feed or start a new feed on the YouTube, making the old one disappear, or the full show will be there for you. But I'm not sure when he will have time to do that. So at the current moment, it's still the truncated show that is up there. But yes, I nothing was different from me on my screen watching through my restream screen. The counter and the timer was going and all that good stuff. And I finished the show and everything looked great. And then I'm looking at the chat comments after the show, and it's like, why is it ending with that's all, folks? And you know, the thing that I had actually put a request out to you, Kits and Cubs, for something, and I didn't see it in the chat. And then I go to the YouTube page, and it's like, oh mother. How does this happen? I don't know. I mean, it's happened to us before a couple of times that it just yeah, broadcasts all the other platforms, but YouTube says no. But I don't think it's ever happened to us midstream. We've had started a show, and we've seen that it isn't broadcasting to YouTube, and we've been able to catch ourselves, and then just like do a take two. But midway, um, that's a new one. And then Tech hated me again yesterday because we do have a treat for you tomorrow. This is a programming note. Tomorrow's show will be a pre-record, but it's a pre-record because yesterday had the opportunity to have an extensive discussion with the founder of the Honest News Network and the host, of course, of the Daily Global Affairs Report on Honest News. And of course, she has a newsletter and a Substack and a website and all that kind of stuff. But her name is a foreign affairs journalist, Olga Nestorova, who does some absolutely amazing work. And it seems that we have certain values that align with how it is that we like to do our shows in terms of and conduct ourselves in the way we do our business, leading first with kindness and leading first with logic and rationality and not wanting to go to extremes and, uh, not willing to accept certain coarseness or the fact that people say, well, the world is hard, so either accept it or move on. And it's like, well, I mean, we do accept it's hard, but that doesn't mean that we need to be hardened. We can still have empathy and decency and caring and still realize that the world is a hard place and come from that angle. So It was a wonderful meeting with a person that I found to be very delightful. Somebody that I mean, she lives in New York and we live here, but that I think that we could, if we were in the same city, we would definitely be hanging out because there's just a lot of things that we have in common, and so there was a simpatico there that was lovely, and the conversation was she's extremely knowledgeable. I learned a lot. So we're going to talk a little bit, about her philosophy and her approach, but then we'll get into stuff related to Russia and Ukraine and China and India and Israel and Gaza and the United States, and of course her view on certain things related to Canada and how we're approaching things, and put it all together. So it's going to be a wide-ranging discussion on sort of global issues and where the state of the world is kind of today. And like I said, after the interview, the conversation, I was feeling very, very, very energized. Of course, that too, we had a tech issue because we started recording the interview, and somewhere in it, for some reason, even though all the buttons indicated stuff and the timer did start, that too stopped recording somewhere. And basically, after the opening credits of the show ran, it stopped recording, and we were just talking away. And then I looked up in the corner at one point because there's a timer up here in the corner when I'm doing the show, and I didn't see the timer anymore. I'm thinking, "Ah, damn." But she was gracious enough to start over again and give us the full amount of time that we were going to have anyway. So thank you, Olga, for being so absolutely wonderful. And um, I think she might. I think there's a very, very strong likelihood that she'll be a guest that we'll have more than once here at the Beaver Lodge. All right. So, yeah. And when we announced that we had her as an interview guest, I saw on the social media immediately a lot of woohoos and, oh my God, I love her and she's so good. So, for those of you who don't know her, we will introduce you to her. And like I said, I thought, well, I had a wonderful time, and hopefully that will shine through when you get to watch it tomorrow. All right, let's get into it, kids and cubs. Oh boy. Yesterday, we were talking about the Bank of Canada interest rate and inflation and those types of things. So we're going to continue a little bit on this subject to open up. And I was saying that I was particularly interested in what Governor of Bank of Canada, Tiff Macklem, was going to say this time around specifically, uh, principally uh, because things are in such a state of flux at this moment, and we're coming back to a time where we are making cuts. And as I said, usually the cuts don't come alone. They can, it's not impossible, but usually they come in small groups, so there might be an expectation of more. I know at the beginning of the year, from where we are now, I think there was an expectation of 2 to 3 potential more cuts. So we got the first one this year. I think there are 2 more cuts before the end of the year, probably one in October before the budget, and one sometime November after the budget. I'm not sure, or early December. I'm not sure if there's. I didn't check the schedule to see if there's another one. You could say roughly there's one every month, but a Bank of Canada announcement, but the schedule is a little different than that. Sometimes I think there might be maybe 10 in the year rather than 12 or something like that, and some of them are just spread out a little more. Um, but the next one is scheduled before the budget, and I know that there will probably be one after that. I just don't know off the top of my head if there'll be 2 after that. So if they were predicting 3 and let's say that there are 2 more opportunities, we would expect a cut and a cut, and if not, maybe nothing, prior to the budget unless there's some major swing and maybe something after, once the bank can figure out what the stimulative effect of all the, invest more, portion of the budget will be, as, Prime Minister Mark Carney likes to call it. But for the moment, however, given that we had stopped a series of cuts in March, and then, uh, you know, we're starting again after being why it is that the bank would have made this decision at this particular time, especially with everything, well, just I feel like points at everything with everything going on, but particularly in this case, the pressures from the United States and also China. We have to admit in this case. Um, what are the rationales? What are the motives? Why now instead of some? What does the bank see as prospects for the economy as it's come. We've had 1 quarter of negative economic growth. Will we actually go into a recession? Are they forecasting that? Are they seeing that in our future? Um, and just other concerns of the like with what's going on in the world. Lots of things are trading. Will the current set of tariffs that we're living under seem to be um, for now somewhat stable. There hasn't been much change since July or in September. There could be more coming. The impact of us taking off some counter tariffs, how that factors in. So there's a lot of balls in the air, a lot more than would be the case in normal times, which is causing the Bank of Canada to shorten the window that they're looking for their forward looking um, concerns. They're always looking at the long term, of course. But again, when it's business as usual, there's a range of time forward that they look ahead. They're shortening their window, giving the speed at which things are changing. Um, there also seems to be an overall shift in the concern by the bank from managing inflation to um, being able to properly manage a cooling economy. So we say often on the show, and you'll might hear the governor of the Bank of Canada say it as well, that what they have is a very blunt tool, and so for certain things, you need monetary policy, but for certain things, you need fiscal policy, which is like more the government with its programs and decisions, like packages to support certain industries and that type of stuff. That would be fiscal policy to come in because the tool is just too blunt and broad based. It affects the entire economy, and when you have to deal with specific sectors, fiscal policy might be the better approach or the wiser approach rather than monetary policy. So you have this mix of things, uh, and a whole lot more of them sloshing around the economy and sloshing around at speeds. If you think of it as a washing machine, you have your regular cycle, but now this is sort of like going woo, 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 like way faster. So therefore, given that churn that's created, um, the bank doesn't, while still trying to look at the long term, um, the instability and the rapid changes being caused by the churn make it such that they see some wisdom in having a slightly shorter lens than usual in order to be nimble enough to respond should there be some type of shock or some type of swing that could be particularly meaningful. So I found the press availability, rather informative in what the governor had to say proactively, but the very, very good question, the business press that had been there as well. So I will bring you a couple of things that the governor had to say and some answers to some questions that I think will add a little color and texture to what it is we are seeing in the economy. The governor of the bank seems to have I mean, you would expect to because it's Governor Bank of Canada, but to have a really good grasp and of what's going on, but also a pretty good ability to explain. I mean, they use a little bit more banker language than layman's terms, but he is able to bring some of it down to layman's terms and to, give us an understanding of what it is that the bank is looking at and how the decisions are slightly more complex this time around, given everything that has been going on. So we'll start with some of the prepared remarks from in this particular section here. He is talking about uh, the fact that there are three specific sort of trends or elements or factors that they brought in this time to their thinking that made it such that this time there would be a cut as opposed to previous times when they were holding the line on that. And for some reason, the thing is going to full screen on me, which I do not need because if it goes to I cannot, if it goes to full screen, unfortunately, I cannot set the screen for you, kits and cubs, so that you can see what is being said. So now that it is back to a regular screen, tech in me this week, I tell you. I Oh boy. Okay, so now that it's back to regular screen, I can therefore show you what it is that the governor has to say here. So uh, we'll get him in here.
0.5%.
Whoops.
Interest rate, today's monetary policy decision. Today, we lowered the policy interest rate by 25 basis points to 2.5%. Through the recent period of trade upheaval, Governing Council has been proceeding carefully, paying particular attention to the risks and uncertainties facing the Canadian economy. Three developments have shifted the balance of risks since our July decision. First, Canada's labour market has softened further. Second, although there are still some mixed signals, on balance, recent data suggest upward pressures on underlying inflation have diminished. And third, with the removal of most retaliatory tariffs by Canada, there is less upside risk to future inflation.
Today, we lowered the policy interest rate by 25 basis points, bringing it.
Okay, so basically, repeating here in French that which he said in English. I'm noticing here, kits and cubs, that you are telling me some audio breaks. Unfortunately, for some reason, I do not know why that is. When I am switching from screen to screen to be able to either load up the video or whatnot, there is a big delay at my end. And I'm not particularly sure what the reason for it is uh, today. Again, just Restream, our platform, has been particularly capricious. So what I will do is when I'm setting up, I will try to take a little more time to do it in longer pauses when I speak to make sure that the flip over has time to fully happen on my screens, and therefore maybe some of the audio will not get cut. So if you're listening, there might be some longer pauses as I do that, but hopefully you will get all the audio as a result. And I am very sorry that this is happening. So there in that quick clip, he mentioned the three elements that influenced the decision, and then he moves on after the section in French to talk a little bit more about the overall global context in which this is taking place. So here we go, kids and cubs.
Future inflation.
Considerable uncertainty remains, but with a weaker economy and less upside risk inflation, council judged that a reduction in the was appropriate to better balance the risks going forward. The bank will continue to assess the risks, look over a shorter horizon than usual, and be ready to respond to new information. So let me provide some details on what we've seen since July. After remaining resilient to sharply higher U.S. tariffs, global growth is now showing signs of slowing. U.S. consumers are cautious and employment gains have slowed. U.S. inflation has picked up in recent months as businesses appear to be passing on some tariff costs to consumer prices. In China, GDP growth was resilient in the first half of the year, but appears to be softening as investment weakens. The Canadian economy is being affected by both U.S. tariffs and the unpredictability of U.S. trade policy. GDP declined 1.6% in the second quarter, largely as expected. Exports to the United States fell sharply, both as payback from the pull forward of activity in the first quarter and because tariffs are dampening U.S. demand. Tariffs are having a profound effect on several key sectors, including auto, steel, and aluminum industries. Chinese tariffs on canola, pork, and seafood, new U.S. tariffs on copper, and higher U.S. tariffs on softwood lumber will spread the direct impacts further. Uncertainty is also weighing on the economy. Business investment contracted in the second quarter. Many businesses have told us they have paused investment plans given elevated uncertainty about U.S. trade policy. Businesses are also concerned that demand in Canada will weaken as the economic fallout broadens. There are some signs of resilience. Consumption was stronger than expected in the second quarter, and housing activity increased. But in the months ahead, low population growth and weakness in the labor market will likely weigh on household spending. Employment has declined in the past 2 months, increasing the unemployment rate to 7.1%. In addition to significant job losses in sectors that rely on U.S. trade, employment growth in other parts of the economy has slowed as businesses have scaled back their hiring plans. Wage growth has continued to ease. Turning to inflation, CPI inflation was 1.9% in August, the same as at the time of the July monetary policy report. Excluding taxes, inflation was 2.4%. The preferred measures of core inflation have been around 3% in recent months, but on a monthly basis, the upward momentum seen earlier in the year has dissipated. A broader range of indicators, including alternative measures of core inflation and the distribution of price changes across CPI components, continue to suggest underlying inflation is running about 2.5%. The federal government's recent decision to remove most retaliatory tariffs on imported goods from the United States will mean less upward pressure on the prices of these goods going forward. Still, the disruptive effects of shifts in trade will add costs even as they weigh on economic activity. It is difficult to predict the extent of cost increases, where they're going to show up, and how they will get passed on to consumer prices. With some stability in U.S. tariffs in recent weeks, near-term uncertainty may have come down a little. But the focus of the upcoming review of the Canada-Mexico agreement. A new U.S. threats to an instrument of geopolitical, so contributing to global uncertainty.
All right, kids and cubs. Those morals are not from any doing on the computer shifting from place to place, but just I guess from the source stream here, not moving. Coming in as smoothly as it should, unfortunately. So it was a longish segment there, with a lot of information packed into it. But here, the governor is making it clear that, yes, economic growth in Canada was down, but global economic growth is down as well. And that's an important piece of information to know, because you'll have Pierre Poilievre trying to blame everything in the world on Carney and whatnot, try to make it sound, talk about Canada in isolation and never put us in the context of what's going on in the world. So trying to make it seem that we are a particular kind of basket case, when all that's happening is that global growth is down, and we are also affected by that, and that it's not necessarily anything that we are doing, but something we didn't ask for. That's just happening, and we have to deal with. Talking about, as we mentioned on previous shows, the payback from the pull forward. You get bigger swings in certain numbers when it comes to exports, but that our exports are indeed down. Mentioning that business investment is contracting because there is less confidence in the stability of the market, and people are not necessarily wanting to make big business decisions at the current moment, which is also going to be affecting employment. People not wanting to put out big outlay for new employees if they don't know what the future is going to bring. They're not certain. Um, there's some fears of weakening demand, but the consumer has been relatively solid during this period. And then, of course, mentioning some good news in the sense that nearer term inflation rates on the preferred measures that the bank likes to look at, because there are a whole bunch of different measures of inflation depending on what you keep in and what you put out and that type of stuff. And there are things that you can do, like, for example, there's the trim rate that he talked about, which in Canada is they take the number and they take something from uh, the top 20, the things that swing the most, the top 20%, and at the top and the bottom level, and sort of like try to mitigate that to have a more stable sort of number that they can look at from month to month, that gives a better sense of how things are actually progressing. Because a swing can be a one-time thing, or a few month thing, that pulls a number in a direction, not artificially, but in a way that is not in line with normal or expected economic behavior. And that therefore they like to sometimes tamper down the effect of those swings to sort of get a more sort of stable number, especially if they're looking longitudinally over time. Uh, and those, so the numbers that are shorter term are doing better than the numbers that are annualized, which would then say that there's a decreased pressure. So, we've been seeing a lot of uh, our inflation rate, the top line number, is come in at like 1.9, 1.7, 1.9, because we have the impacts of having removed carbon pricing, consumer-based carbon pricing, working its way, and that will work in its way for a full year from the time that it started, and then that will disappear out of the number, and that will rise by that. But we now have a new metric with this, was when we reduced our counter tariffs, whatever that was adding to the price of things, that has now been removed, and that will start its 1 year cycle as well, going through the core number. So we do have, when you look at those two things together happening, it seems that there is less upward pressure on those numbers for inflation. So they don't expect for the foreseeable future for there to be a major rise in some of their preferred metrics that they look at as a bank, which again helps them then make the shift to say, well, we don't have to worry about inflation anymore, but we are noticing a cooling economy. Then we have to look at this is the fire that we're now going to start looking at with regard to our monetary policy, given that we don't need to be as concerned about the other one for the moment. Yeah, I think that's pretty comprehensive look at it. Um, and the thing is also, we often like to compare Canada and United States numbers, and we do, but we have to realize that countries calculate their numbers in different ways. So when the Bank of Canada is looking at a trim number, for example, their trim number excludes the top and bottom 20% of the weighted price change, but the Federal Bank, Reserve Bank of Cleveland, well, it will use a 16% trimmed mean CPI, excluding 8% from each tail. So, we use different numbers and different metrics to do that, even though the goal is overall the same. So they're not necessarily comparable digit to digit. But when you look at the number, the American number compared to itself over time, and the Canadian number compared to over time, when you know what gets factored in or out, uh, you know, you can get a general number that has in which a certain amount of volatility is filtered out, so that you can have a more stable and reliable predictor of where it is that the economy is going. Um, all right. So what else does he have to say here? Uh, so at this moment, we're going closer near to the end of his prepared statements, and he is going to talk a little bit about, and this one's a shorter clip of what it is that he is paying attention to at the moment, or what it is, I should say, not just him, but the entire board is looking to in order to base future decisions coming. Well, I was going to say future decisions moving forward, but I guess future decisions by definition are moving forward. So that would have been a little redundant.
Given the impact of U.S. tariffs and changing trade relationships, how this spills over into business investment, employment, and household spending, how the cost effects of trade disruptions and reconfigured supply chains are passed on to consumer prices, and how inflation expectations evolve. We are focused on ensuring that Canadians continue to have confidence in price stability through this period of global upheaval. We will support economic growth while ensuring inflation remains well controlled. And
there you go. So that's what he had for that particular section. Pretty run of the mill, average stuff. What you would expect. Nothing extraordinary or to write home about as being a shift or a change that is significant in any way here. Um, moving to the question and answer period. The first question being asked here asks about if I remember correctly, because what I wrote here in my notes is factoring in fiscal policy. So I'm going to, if I remember correctly, the journalist is asking them, the governor, how much the government's current fiscal policy has factored in to the decision. And the governor had some interesting things to say about that. So let's see if I can get that there to you. And I'll just take a couple of extra seconds to make sure that there's no glitch.
The communication today, besides any explicit guidance, is any mention of fiscal policy. There's clearly a lot coming down the track. Could you elaborate on how you're thinking about it? Surely it must have come up at the meetings, the deliberations over the past week.
so on fiscal policy, there have been a number of announcements of targeted support to the most affected, to the directly affected sectors, the sectors that are facing new tariffs. There have also more recently been announcements on some big projects. From our perspective, we will, as those plans become more concrete, we will be assessing their macroeconomic impact. Yesterday, the Minister of Finance announced the budget will be tabled on November 4th. we'll certainly be looking at that closely. I mean, from our macro perspective, it's less about individual measures and more about how everything fits together, what the overall macro impact is. And certainly once we have the budget, we will be assessing the implications of the government's plans on the economic outlook, what that means for growth, for inflation, and ultimately for what we need to do with interest rates.
All right. So that's how the bank is looking at the factoring in of fiscal policy. The next section here, well, I have the question and the answer, so I will play both here. But the governor of the Bank of Canada makes it clear, and you will hear it at the end of the answer, that he is also concerned. Uh, he, maybe concerned is not the right word, but he is not blind or unsympathetic to the fact that there are great concerns about affordability.
Okay, Greg Quinn from Market News, please.
Good morning to you both. You are cutting interest rates, as you say, with core inflation at 3%, the top of your band. You're also looking at widers, and you say those are 2.5%. Given how upset Canadians were when inflation jumped after the pandemic, aren't you taking some kind of a risk here with inflation pressures?
Well, Greg, I do want to underline that, as you said, Canadians remain concerned about the cost of living. And our primary mandate is to maintain low, stable inflation, and we are very focused on that. I mean, total inflation is 1.9%. It's been running slightly below 2 since April, largely as a result of the elimination of the consumer carbon tax. You look at, yes, trim and median are running around 3%. As I indicated in response to Paul's question, if you look at the more recent monthly readings, they're running around, if you look at like the 3-month moving average, it's about 2.5%. And if you look at a range of other core measures, you look at like traditional exclusion measures, CPIX, food and energy, CPIX, they're sort of 2.4, 2.6. If you look at the percentage of components of the CPI that are rising faster than 3, it's roughly about where it is when inflation's around 2.5%. So when we look at it, we see underlying, headline inflation's 1.9, underlying's running about 2.5. Some of that upward momentum we saw has eased off. So yes, we do need to consider where inflation is going. At this point, inflationary pressures look a little more contained, and against that background and the background of a weakening economy that will put additional downward pressure on inflation, that tipped the balance of risks in favor of cutting our policy rate today. But we are proceeding carefully. We are going to be balancing those risks, and we don't want Canadians to have to worry about big increases in the cost of living.
Next,
So there you go. You can see that, even though we're talking about a central banker, and even though, he is using banking lingo and jargon and all that kind of stuff, that, we often have these images or these views of central bankers as being a little heartless, perhaps, or not as concerned with the average person. But here he is, making it very clear that one of the things that he is particularly concerned about is ensuring that Canadians are able to not have to undergo particularly any price shocks if he can play any role in helping that. The next bit I have is a very good point that he is making when he's comparing. We're looking at comparing inflation in Canada versus inflation in the United States a little bit, but also to the tariffs. Um, there's not only an increase in cost of doing business with regard to the tariffs, in that, for example, there might be less demand for the products because the importer has to pay, and let's say they don't want it as much anymore. But if you were trying to adopt a strategy to sort of diversify your markets as a business because of these tariffs, uh, that there are costs related to that as well that need to be factored in. So we'll take a look at this one. And this is something that, like, once he said it was like, oh well, duh, of course. But it actually had not occurred to me yet in any of my analysis before he had mentioned it. And now that he has, I now have it in the back of my mind as something that I need to consider as well.
We have Mark Rendell from the Globe and Mail, please.
What would you need to see on the inflation front and on, I guess, the economic and employment front to cut again this fall?
Well, Mark, if there was just one thing, the job would be so easy. I think you got to look at everything together. Obviously, tariffs are weakening the Canadian economy. You can see that very acutely in the directly affected sectors, for example, transportation and related services that are supporting those trade sectors. And you've seen employment, you've seen quite a bit of job losses in those sectors. In one thing that has changed since July. In July, when we looked in July, what you saw is that in the rest of the economy, employment was still growing. Employment growth in the rest of the economy has now slowed. We will certainly be looking very closely at what are the spillovers from weaker exports to the rest of the economy, and that that is going to be an important factor going forward. The weaker the economy, obviously, the more downward pressure that puts on inflation. The other side of it, though, is certainly when you talk to businesses, they're telling us they're facing a host of new costs related to trade disruption. They're trying to change their supply chains, they're finding new suppliers, they're trying to develop new markets, they're trying to reroute things. That all entails cost, and when you step back, the reality is tariffs increase trade friction with our biggest trader. That has efficiency costs. Monetary policy can't undo that. It can't reverse that. What we can do is help the economy adjust while maintaining well-controlled inflation. That's what we're focused on. To get more specifically to your question, it's going to be about balancing those risks. We've demonstrated today, if the risks tilt, if the risks shift, we're prepared to take action. And if the risks tilt further, we're prepared to take more action. But we're going to take it one meeting at a time. We are taking a shorter horizon. We're being a little less forward-looking than usual. And we'll make that risk assessment in October when we get there.
Okay, so those were the major three lead-off questions for the question and answer period for the Governor of the Bank of Canada. There's a couple of other things that I will show you with regard to that, because where did I disappear to? Because Doug Ford comes up a little bit in there. As you know, Kits and Cubs Doug Ford for a few months now has been channeling Donald Trump in terms of trying to exert pressure as a politician on the Bank of Canada to lower interest rates, something that should not be done. monetary policy and fiscal policy are meant to be kept separate. So Doug Ford is way out over his skis here, once again trying to do the job of everybody else when he's not doing particularly well at mastering his own, the one that we're actually paying him to do. And when the Bank of Canada announced that they were cutting their central bank rate from 2.75 to 2.5, Doug Ford responded, "Good, now do more," or something like that, which is like, just shut up. Just shut up. It's like your premiers in particular should not be commenting on federal monetary policy in public, and should definitely not be trying to sway it or influence it in any way. This is just not your purview in any way, shape, or form. Um, so this is the type of stuff that Doug Ford does, right? One of the types of stunts that he does that makes it such that it's extremely performative. But why it is that he has one of these high approval ratings, it's like, well, he's fighting for us to lower the interest rates. I mean, what a great premier like this! But it's all showbiz because he has absolutely no authority, no power. It is not his place. It is not his business. This is all, again, all for domestic consumption, the consumption of his base. In this case, when I say domestic, and for him, to get some clips of him looking tough and pretending he's fighting for the little guy. But on this particular file, he is literally impotent. It's all performance art in this case. And we'll get to a clip on that. Some additional information here when it comes to inflation here. When we were talking about the numbers yesterday, I was mentioning that there's a smaller year-on-year decline in gasoline prices. So gasoline prices have been going up, and that was a key factor in the pickup in headline inflation. If we excluded gasoline, the consumer price index rose 2.4% in August. The top line number was 1.9%. But that is down because it had increased to 2.5 in each of the previous 3 months. So the consumer price index is not growing as fast as it was. At the same time, food inflation ticked up to 3.4% versus 3.3 in July, mainly due to higher prices for meat specifically, which were 7.2% higher versus 4.7% higher. But yesterday, when I was talking about the main numbers comprised of two things, from the increases or the decreases are affected by two things: price of gas and price of shelter. So while the price of gas is going up, and the price of shelter is a main component, for shelter, however, inflation is cooling. Meanwhile, it says here, and this is from Statistics Canada, meanwhile, prices for shelter represent almost 30% of the CPI basket, and they increased by 2.6% in August, but that's easing from 3% in July as both mortgage and rent costs moderated. So even though the price of shelter overall, because the increase is 2.6 and shelter represents 30% of the CPI basket, so it's particularly influential. And that number 2.6, is high-ish. That accounts for a certain amount, but if we're looking at month to month, that pressure is easing, and it's easing rapidly enough if it's gone from 3% to 2.6% in the space of 1 month. So food is going up, shelter is high. It wasn't as high as food, but it is decreasing, and shelter is decreasing faster than is food. So that can be helpful. However, that's probably more helpful for people who have variable mortgages than people who have a locked-in mortgage and people who are paying rent, because the rent doesn't vary over the course of the year as the interest rate goes up and down. So again, benefits for certain people when it comes to shelter, but not distributed evenly across all demographics, which is why I keep on saying you have to ask about renters versus homeowners, new entrants to the rental market and new entrants to the homeownership market versus people who have been there for a while, and people who are high income earners versus lower income earners. So people who are more likely to have stocks and bonds and maybe a variable rate mortgage versus people who are less likely to have them and have fixed housing, lodging costs that don't sway with the rate of inflation or with interest rate cuts. Interest rate cuts could mean that your next rent increase may not be as high when that time comes, and that's how you might benefit. But whereas the next cut rate, because I have a variable rate mortgage, I'm going to see something not for September's mortgage payment, but for October's. It will come through and like this, and I will pay a little less in October. Anybody who's renting will not be paying less in October. So again, that interest rate cut, once it works its way through the entire economy, eventually might get down to people who are renting in the form of maybe their rent not going up as much or maybe not going up at all from year to year. But for those of us that have a variable rate mortgages, we see a more immediate impact of relief in that case. With regard, if we're looking to the forecast for inflation, it's expected to be 2.20% by the end of this quarter. So it's expected to go up a little bit more, according to Trading Economics, global macro models, and analysts' expectations. In the long term, however, the Canadian inflation rate is projected to trend around 2.7% next year in 2026, and then back down to 2.3% in 2027, according to economic models. So we will see, we are expecting to see some rising inflation between now and the end of 2026, up to maybe 0.8% more on the top line number than we have right now, and then moderating back in 2027. When we look at the United States, for example, because, as we say, when the United States catches a cough, we catch a cold, their annual inflation rate accelerated to 2.9 in August 2025. Now, again, the way they calculate their rate is different than ours. Still, their top line number is a full percent higher than ours. So the situation is very different down there. And that's the highest since January, after holding at 2.7% in both June and July, in line with market expectations. In the United States, prices rose at a faster pace also for food, 3.2% versus 2.9%. So inflation on food is not as high in the United States. Again, not sure if the baskets are exactly the same, but we're at 3.4. But whereas ours only went up 0.1% last month, in the United States, judging on how they calculated, it went up 0.3%, so 3 times as fast. Used cars and trucks are higher, 6% versus 4.8%. That's probably some of the tariff stuff working its way through the system. And new vehicles up 0.7% versus 0.4%. Energy costs increased for the first time in 7 months, so the price of gas is going up in the United States as well, up 0.2% versus down 0.16%, so that's a 1.8% swing there. Prices for gasoline, minus 0.6 versus minus 9.5, and oil, minus 0.5 versus minus 2.9. So prices for gasoline and fuel oil did decrease less, and the rise for natural gas prices remained elevated. And that's been up 13.8% year over year. On a monthly basis, the CPI in the United States went up 0.4%, which is the most since January, and it was above forecast of 0.3%. There, where for us, the cost of shelter is decreasing. In the United States, the cost of shelter is increasing 0.4%. And for them, that is the largest upward pressure. For us, the largest upward pressure was the price of gas and fuel. On the other hand, in the United States, core inflation remained steady at 3.1%, the same as in July and at February's peak, while core CPI rose 0.3% on a month-to-month, matching July's pace and matching forecasts. In the United States, the inflation forecast is that it's expected to go to 3.2% by the end of this quarter, so we'll still be 1% higher than we are. So we're staying proportional. There's no change. There's no widening or decreasing of the gap between ours that is expected in the forecast. And according to Trending Economics, trading economics, global macro models, and analyst expectations, in the long term, the United States inflation rate is projected to trend around 2.4% in 2026 and 2.3% in 2027, according to their models, which would be a little lower than we are looking to be at in 2026. And then in 2027, we would both be the same again. So we are going to swing a little wider than the United States, but in 2026. But when we get to 2027, we should both be in the same place with our numbers. Again, assuming that they would be equal. We know that the metrics, what's measured in them, is different. However, so that's what's going on there. So whatever pressures we are feeling, the United States is feeling, they might feel it even more, because if Donald Trump decides to impose even more tariffs in more exacting ways, that will just worsen the numbers for them. It will have an impact on us as well. But there's going to come a point at which, when those numbers start filtering through, where the maximum impact is going to be hitting the United States, if only by virtue of the fact that they are waging a tariff war on over 190 countries simultaneously, which is literally will affect pretty much the cost of everything in that case. Whereas the things that are being affected in our economy are fewer. Some of them are being affected, but some of them are being affected at such a high rate, like steel and lumber and all that type of stuff. But yeah, there's some differences and similarities between the two nations here. And again, just mentioning the U.S. data, because, like I said, what happens over there really affects over here. Their inflation data came out, I think, around September 11th, so a couple of days, about a week before ours did. And then, ours came in after, was just released a few days ago. So getting back to Governor Macklem, and this is here, he was asked directly, pretty much point blank, about Doug Ford's particular statements. And this is, I would say, in pretty much how you say he's irrelevant and he can fuck off. Without being as vulgar and crass about it as I have just been. But I would really like Doug Ford to just shut up when it comes to interest rates. It's just not. Nobody needs his opinion. It has no worth. It has no value. And everyone will make clear, it also has no weight.
In a post on X, Ontario Premier Doug Ford responded to your decision today by saying, "Good, now keep going." I want to get your reaction not only to that, but also to ask you about how live the discussion was by Governing Council for an even deeper cut than you did today.
Well, look, on the first point, we take our decisions independently of the political process. They are evidence-based decisions that will continue. End of story. On the second point, we did discuss two options, but as I indicated, there was a clear consensus across the Governing Council that the balance of risks had tilted in favor of reducing the policy interest rate, and I think I've outlined the reasons why we got there.
So, yeah, he didn't have much time whatsoever for that comment by Doug Ford, as you could tell from that answer. He is then asked about, and some people are starting to worry about this, whether there would be a need for quantitative easing, as we've seen in the last two major economic crunches. And here's what he had to say about that.
Colin Daiichi Mishima from Nikkei, please.
Hi, good morning, governors. Looking ahead, if the Canadian economy fails to recover even as rate cuts continue, is there a possibility that the Bank of Canada might implement quantitative easing, would Trump tariffs qualify as the kind of like exceptional circumstances that would justify QE?
Well, look, we're a long way from even contemplating that. We've got considerable room with our policy rate. I think what I would emphasize is if you go back to where we were in July, we published 3 scenarios for the Canadian economy. In one based on current tariffs, another one with an escalation of tariffs, and another with a de-escalation. If you take the current tariff scenario, which is roughly the tariff scenario we're still in, we're not expecting a recession. Growth was clearly negative in the second quarter. We are expecting growth, somewhere around 1% in the second half of the year. So that is slow growth. It's not going to feel good. It is growth, but it's slow growth because the Canadian economy is adjusting to a different relationship with its biggest trading partner. In the escalation scenario, where there's a significant escalation of tariffs, U.S. tariffs, in that scenario, the Canadian economy does go into recession, and certainly the situation would be worse. Having said that, I still think we'd be a long way from quantitative easing, and obviously in the de-escalation scenario, things would look better, growth would be stronger, you'd get more of a recovery.
So here, some very important context again, so that you are armed for the BS that Pierre is going to try and bring our way. But the governor of Bank of Canada at the current moment made it very clear that he does not see the possibility of a recession because right now we are looking at some slow growth for the third quarter. So we would not have 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction, providing that there isn't a major escalation in tariffs coming from the United States. At that point, that would be a different game. But even he says that even if there were escalation, a major one from the United States, that would not create a situation so dire as was the case in 2008 and during COVID, that the issue of quantitative easing, or what Pierre Poilievre likes to call printing money, would not be a factor here. So if you hear Pierre started talking about, well, we're in a recession already, or we're halfway to a recession, or the recession is coming, or God, look, the government's starting to print money again. All of that is BS, unless we see a major escalation uh, from the United States with regard to tariffs, and then uh, you know that might be in our future, but it's not a situation that we are in currently. And so long as there's no escalation, that is not a situation in to which we are heading, according to the governor of Bank of Canada. So that's some important context, because Pierre loves to describe everything as being the worst ever and fear mongering like crazy. So when he's trying to push your fear button on that, so long as there isn't a major escalation in tariffs from the United States, that is a blathering from him that is best to be ignored, and don't include it into your doom scrolling. All right, kids and cubs, here we have the governor of making some comments, specifically here, as we mentioned earlier, when I was talking about the bluntness of the tool when it comes to fiscal policy, uh, monetary policy versus fiscal policy.
That is that tariffs, particularly the way the U.S. has implemented them, the tariffs in place in the Canadian economy are applied to very specific sectors. Automobiles, aluminum. You got Chinese tariffs on canola, pork, and seafood. You've now got higher U.S. tariffs on softwood lumber, tariffs on copper. For the rest of the economy, for other sectors, actually tariffs remain very low, providing your business is compliant with CUSMA. So the impacts are very concentrated in these sectors that have been hit and the services that are servicing those. Monetary policy is a blunt instrument. We can help the overall economy adjust, but we can't target individual sectors. Fiscal policy really is a much better instrument for that. And there have been a number of targeted measures to support those sectors. And then, there's sort of a broader industrial strategy or a broader strategy, or how are we going to adjust to the reality that we're going to have a very different trading relationship with our biggest partner? How do we grow our internal market? How do we, get goods overseas? Those things are going to play out over longer periods. But it's all those things. So we'll be looking at what fiscal policy. What fiscal policy is doing. We'll take that into account as we take our decisions. As I said, the most monetary policy can't undo the effects of tariffs. The most it can do is try to help the economy adjust at a macro level while keeping inflation.
Okay. Now, the final one for you from the press conference is another bit of contextual information that you should have in the back of your mind, kits and cubs, because Pierre is trying to frame everything that is going on in the economy at the moment as being, of course, Mark Carney's fault, right? He's been in power. He's been prime minister for 6 full months. And I'm taking note of a comment that a kit made on a previous show that you all know it's actually only been 4.5 months since the election, which is true because when Pierre said that the first time, I was thinking, there's a lie again. He's inflating. But then I remember the leadership convention took place earlier. And after the leadership convention, 5 days later, he was sworn in as prime minister when he took over for Justin Trudeau. So he was prime minister for a period of time prior to the election and now. And when you include both of that, when Pierre, I think it was almost like literally 6 months to the day that he was sworn in 5 days after winning the leadership of the Liberal Party. So when Pierre says 6 months, he includes all of that period, the portion of time prior to the election, and then the whole election period when we were in caretaker government mode. He includes that as well as the time that Mark Carney should have been active, making things better and taking actions. And he was just dilly-dallying and wasting time and all that kind of stuff, which, well, we all know what happens when there's a caretaker government. You're not making any financial decisions for the country unless there's some major crisis that happens, and then usually there's some type of mechanism that's specifically strict for that. But it would have to be something absolutely massive, like we're going into war, or the bottom completely fell out of the economy, or something of the sort. But just for a major speed bump or a curveball that someone threw you or something like that, is like, no, we can absorb that during the time of the election. We can deal with that once we have a government. So Pierre is actually being literally accurate with the number this time around. Again, if you look at the context, there was a certain chunk of that time where making financial decisions for the country was not on the menu, right? And anything that had to be legislated was also not on the menu because Parliament wasn't sitting. So, Pierre's being rather disingenuous. Another manner he's been being disingenuous lately is there's this clip going around about him saying, well, oh, wow, it's going to be 4 years before there's a shovel in the ground, blah, 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 and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, everybody who watched the announcement, of course, he says this for people who didn't, knows that that was specifically for the high-speed rail project with Alto. And mentioning 4 years was actually a good thing because the Prime Minister had announced that they are looking for ways to make it such that the projected time for shovels in the ground, which was supposed to be 8 years, would be reduced to 4. And I've seen some interesting proposals from people saying that, if they could actually get the plans for the Ottawa to Montreal portion, which is probably the shortest major city link on the projected path, um, approved quickly and going, you could probably have shovels on the ground for that bit within 2 years as you are doing the overall plan for the rest of it. I'm not sure how feasible that is because if we are looking from Quebec City to Toronto, you probably want to have a whole path mapped out and a whole project plan. Doing, and that might take some time before, some longer time to do that. But if there is a way to accomplish that, that might be a way to get a shovel in the ground faster on a certain type of projects that would allow Pierre the opportunity to complain even less. But in that one, being completely disingenuous, claiming that 4 years was going to be extremely long and it's going to apply to all projects and that there would be nothing starting at all before 4 years when, that was specifically about the high speed rail. And he was talking about having the time that it would take to get a shovel in the ground, which is a good thing. So given that we all know how Pierre likes to play fast and loose with the truth, he's been saying a lot of things about the economy and trying to, make it point you in the direction of who to blame and hoping that you will ready aim fire in that direction. And there's some important contextual information with regard to how the economy was doing and what path we were on pre-February when Trump decided to insert himself into the affairs of every single other nation on the planet except Russia, of course, that didn't get hit with these tariffs. And what the situation is now.
Uncertainty. But, before we got hit with tariffs, we could see lower interest rates. Were feeding through the economy. Growth was picking up. The unemployment rate was ticking down. Then, come February, we're hit with a series of tariff threats, tariff reversals, and we've seen the consequences of that.
So there you go. Just making it very clear that there is a before and after, and February was a market shift in what it is that was happening here in Canada. We were on one path, and interest rates were lowering, inflation was coming under control, employment was going up, economic activity was starting to generate. We were on a path, we were opening a cycle that might last for, that positive cycle that was, projected to last however long it was projected to last at that time. But that was sort of the forward path. And then all of a sudden there was a needle scratch on the record and, things took a shift. And that is not any mismanagement on our part, any bad decision on our part. It's something that was done to us and that we're trying to deal and cope with as best as possible. So when Pierre again is in your ear, like that yippy little chihuahua, muttering, yip, 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 who it is to blame, know that it is BS again, because you have the governor of the Bank of Canada telling you this. We were on a good path. We're on a good path prior to this. All right, kids and cubs, that is the big sort of inflation and interest. Looked into it more in depth than we typically do, but because, again, this is one specific, very special time. And like I said, I had the feeling that the Governor of Bank of Canada would be giving us a lot of contextual information and nuance to better understand what is going on. And I was not wrong, and the governor did not disappoint. So, bringing our attention to a whole bunch of various other things, including the costs of businesses having to reorient to different markets. There's these might be one-time costs in terms of reorientation. There might if there are additional shipping costs to get things further, well, then those of course are permanent structural changes. But going out to it costs money to make it rain, basically, right? You have to go out and meet potential new clients. You have to build relationships. You have to dedicate staff towards it. There might be some, you're signing new deals, new contracts, which means legal fees, that type of stuff, right? There are some costs to it's not like you just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, person from country X, would you want to do business with us? Guys from country Y with whom we usually do business are being real dicks. Yeah, sure, just ship it over." And that's all there is to it. There are legalities, there's paperwork, there's some, unless you already had a pre-established relationship with that person or that company, and you say, "Hey, let's expand it." But if you're going out and cold calling for all intents and purposes, meeting up new people, that takes money and it takes some time, and there's a transition period, and so and that's a cost too that businesses have to bear. So just a good overall picture. But main things to consider here is that inflationary pressures are easing unless there's something new that comes from the United States, and that the bank is less concerned with rising inflation and more concerned with an actual cooling economy. And that seems to be what is now number one in their mirror when they're looking at what it is that they will be doing in the future. Kits and cups. We called it cuts and stunts today because, well, we're talking about some stunts. We talked about one, Doug Ford trying to stunt all over on interest rates. It seems to be something he's been doing for the last few months to try to create the impression with the voters that he is fighting for the little guy. But there were a couple of other stunts along the way over the past little while. This is one. You may have, well, I'm pretty sure you've heard about the whole Crown Royal thing that Doug Ford did the other day. Didn't really talk about it then, but there have been some developments brought to my attention by Kit Elaine, of course. So I will bring those to you. But there was this moment where Doug Ford had heard that Crown Royal had made a decision to relocate one of its bottling plants located in Ontario to the United States to serve the US market. And at first, it was sort of framed that, oh, Crown Royal was being disloyal and they were up and leaving and, taking their production and everything to the United States and abandoning us and all that type of stuff. And turns out it wasn't really that. Turns out it was more that Crown Royal it makes the Crown Royal in Canada, but sells some in Canada and sells some into the United States. And for its U.S. buyers, bottling was an issue in terms of import tariffs back and forth, the bottles and all that kind of stuff. So they figured that they would bottle it in the United States for serving their U.S. market closer. But there were still two plants. There's one in Montreal and I think one in Gimli, Manitoba. I think maybe Montreal, I'm not sure, but one in Quebec and one in Manitoba that were still existing, and they were, making the Crown Royal here and bottling it here for the Canadian market. So Doug Ford was calling for a big boycott of Crown Royal and decided that he was going to commit some type of public relations stunt. Again, one of these things that if we are watching it from this end, and we are not fans of Doug Ford, look at it and we roll our eyes. Again, it's a performance art, political theater, all that good stuff. Um, but again, sends the message, you know, the sort of Captain Canada message he's trying to cultivate for himself. And again, you know, fighting for the little guy, saying out loud, you know, the things that Mark Carney can't say because he needs to be appropriately diplomatic, particularly with Trump, who is a particularly thin-skinned, uh, as the U.S. comedians are learning. But it's a stunt that went wrong for him. Failed to understand the first rule of political stunts, um, which is um, practice your stunt before you do it. So here, according to account here, Millennial Moron, Doug Ford shows the importance of a good props manager. They removed the bottle cellophane seal before the press event, but forgot about the slow pour cap, turning what should have been a satisfying dumping out of whiskey into a mere angry sprinkling.
So you know something, a message to the CEO in France, you hurt my people, I'm going to hurt you. You're going to feel the pain in February when these people don't have a paycheck. And I'm going to stand up for the people of Ontario, and I encourage all of Canadians, all of Ontarians, stand up for the people, because you don't know if you're next. But the thing that ticks me off, I get it. I get that companies move back and forth. But what I don't get, when you're someone's largest customer in North America, you're going after the largest customer. You know something? I always say smart people aren't too smart, and you guys are about as dumb as a bag of hammers for doing this. So, you know something? I found a bottle, and I don't even drink, of Crown Oil, right? I see that Crown Oil. I saw it at home. So this is what I think about Crown Oil. That's what they could do. And I think everyone else should do the same thing. Start supporting companies that make whiskey here by Ontario people. That's what we need to do, is support each other. You know something? I'm going to make this even come out quicker, because it's not coming out. I know Mayor Barry wants to lie on the floor right now with his mouth open. No thanks. But no, I wish I could get this out coming out quicker, but I'll stand here until it's all done. Anyways, folks, thank you, my brothers and sisters in uniform over at Crown Royal. I got.
Yep, music from Curb Your Enthusiasm, right? Didn't work. Reminded me a lot of Rob Ford in that clip, the way he was carrying on and like this. But again, this is not righteous anger. He's not outraged. This is a sketch. This is a shtick. This is something that could have been on Saturday Night Live. Oh my God, I can't believe you're doing it. Well, you know what I think about this? Well, it's not coming out like I want to, but I'm just going to stay here till it's done. I know you would like to, right? I'm sure the people in France that he was about were really, really, really trembling in their shorts after seeing that. And then, of course, the next day there was news articles that saying that, you know, well, Doug Ford sort of tampering down what it is that he means about that, the boycott and type thing, just like he did with the Starlink thing the first time around, because somebody brought it to Doug Ford's attention that if all they're doing is moving their bottling to the United States to be closer to the United States markets to get the bottles there, if we start boycotting Crown Royal, we might make the Canadians who have jobs in Quebec and in Manitoba bottling Crown Royal in Canada for Canadians who are buying Crown Royal made in Canada and bottled in Canada. Yeah. Maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to actually boycott Crown Royal. in that particular instance. And then we haven't heard Doug Ford mention Crown Royal very much since then. Wonder why. Wonder why. But according to Kit Elaine, there's some good news with regard to this. According to CBC News, Amherstburg's town council has already heard from a few companies who could potentially redevelop the Diageo bottling facility if and when it closes in February, the public heard on Monday. Administration has had correspondence with 3 businesses interested in potential reinvestment of Diageo properties and is creating a portfolio of the site for potential investors once we understand Diageo's plans, Mayor Michael Prue said at a council meeting on Monday. Diageo, the spirits giant behind Crown Royal, announced late last month it was closing its Amherstburg bottling facility in February. The move will cost more than 250 people their jobs. Prue made a statement near the beginning of the meeting, hitting back against the unnamed social media commentator he said had been critical of the town in the wake of the Diageo news. In outlining the actions the town has taken since the news was announced, Prue said they've been in talks with Ontario Premier Doug Ford's office and the offices of MPP Anthony Liardi and MP Chris Lewis, as well as chambers of commerce and investment groups. Other actions include being in touch with Workforce Windsor Essex about workshops for laid-off workers and conversations with federal and provincial economic development representatives about accessing grant funding that could be used to help workers. In statements to CBC, Diageo has said that the move is to be closer to its U.S. consumer base and Crown Royal will continue to be made in Canada. The company has also said that Crown Royal for the Canadian market will be bottled here. Political figures have called on Ontarians and Canadians to boycott Crown Royal, with Premier Ford last week pouring out a bottle of the liquor on the ground during a press conference. But others have urged people to remember there are hundreds of other Canadian jobs on the line, including Manitoba, where Crown Royal is made. Council opened the floor for members of the public to ask questions and speak. After that, Council passed a motion affirming support for the actions of the town so far and drafting a formal letter to other Ontario municipalities requesting support. Quote, "We're proud to live in this town. We're proud of our industrial history. We're proud of our small businesses," said Councillor Don MacArthur. Quote, "We faced challenges before, we're going to face challenges again, but together we're going to face this one no matter what comes. We're all going to stand shoulder to shoulder to shoulder and fight for the future of our town." So there we go. It looks like there is at least people that are willing, companies that are willing to come in and hopefully they will come with 250 or more even jobs that are as well paying or even better for what is going to be happening at the Diageo site once Crown Royal moves its bottling activities to the United States there to serve its market. But a door closes and a window opens. So hopefully the people of the town, even though there's some disruption, it will be as seamless as possible. And that is news from September 8th that I had missed and that Kit Elaine brought to my attention. There is another stunt also that has been happening, kits and cubs, and this one is sticks in my craw specifically because again I am not a big fan of this performance type thing, and there were four conservative MPs, and then there's a lot of people that are amplifying it. So clearly, this was a strategy, I would guess. But there were 4 conservative MPs who decided to post some video of them waiting for a meeting that they claim is supposed to happen and that didn't happen, and then tried to blame this somehow on the government. So let's take a look at where it is and who it is they are and what it is that they were doing.
This is the Conservative Justice Team. We are here in our room, ready to start a Justice Committee meeting. But colleagues, we're the only ones in this room. We don't have our Liberal chair. We have no Liberal members. We have no Bloc member. We were here, sent by Canadians, to do a job. And that job is to fix a broken justice system. We're here, ready to work. I sent a letter to the chair yesterday asking for a meeting today because it is a regularly scheduled Justice Day. Crickets. Not even the courtesy of a response. Roman, what do you have to say about this?
It is Tuesday afternoon. Justice Committee is supposed to meet.
Okay. That's about all we need there because in this one, the acting is as believable as, oh, it's Patrick. He's bought life insurance. Or, and that's why I filled in the Canadian Legal Will Kit. I mean, like, come on. Come on. These four people wrote the letter, I guess expected, demanding a meeting for that day when a meeting was already scheduled for today, Thursday. It seems that they are unable to read a calendar. Now, when he says this was a Justice Day, yeah, in the last session of Parliament, they met on Wednesdays. There's been an election. There's been a new speech from the throne. There is a new session of Parliament. I'm. I mean, oh my God. Well, I should say, actually, there's been a speech from the throne. Then there was an election. That's true. But this is a new session of Parliament. I'm not sure why four members of the opposition party would just assume that since Justice Committee meetings were on Wednesdays in the last session of Parliament, that they would be on Wednesdays again in this session of Parliament. There's a calendar entry very clearly stating that the meeting is on Thursday. So you got Larry Brock, a frequent stunt performer for the Conservative Party of Canada, who is the Member of Parliament for Brantford, Brant South Six Nations, calls himself the Shadow Minister. We don't have those. Parliamentary Critic for Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Basically writing, unbelievable, Parliament was back, but Liberal members of the Justice Committee were missing in action. Crime is out of control. Canadians are terrified, but Conservatives are ready to restore safety to our streets. And they are ready to restore safety to your streets by showing up to a meeting that doesn't exist. Four of them sit in an empty room at a table because there is nobody in all of Canada that they are supposed to serve that is waiting for them somewhere in another room. We pay for this. To light that room, the space for that room, electricity that goes in that room, the four people that are sitting there, their salaries, their benefits. We pay for this. We paid for them to go to a room, four people, to sit there so that they can record a video lying to Canadians that there was supposed to be a meeting. He asked for a meeting. One was not confirmed for that day and time because one was already on the calendar. Pretending that it was some type of slight that he didn't get an answer for a meeting that was not going to happen, and everybody knew was not going to happen because one was scheduled. They did this on all of ours time and all of our dime. If they had time to do this, they had time to be meeting with constituents. If they are local MPs, they had time to be meeting with stakeholders. They had time to be meeting with parliamentary colleagues from other parties to actually discuss things having to do with justice. That might make Thursday's meeting or today's meeting run smoothly or be more efficient. But no, instead, what they did, all four of them, was use our money and our time and the facilities that we pay for to go and record a video so that they could commit fraud against us, making us believe that there was supposed to be some meeting and that the Liberals were not there, or that they were asking for meetings and people didn't want to have them because they don't care about crime when there were meetings scheduled. The schedule is published. It's public. Everybody can see it. So you got four idiots either confessing that they do not know how to read a calendar, or they so little care about you and think that you are so dumb that you would be gullible to buy this type of fraud. And then they sent you the bill. These are the types of things for which we need to sign that damn petition. 17,870 signatures now. I think the word is starting to get out because it went up 3,000 signatures over a short period of time. But Kits and Cubs, again, I am going to bring your attention to, and it's a little bit of a democracy is something that you do, coming a little early today, your attention. Petition E6679. We have until November 29th to sign it. If you are listening, go to ourcommons.ca and then look for petitions E6679 ethical issues. And I'm going to put it here again in the chat. Hopefully that will show up. And yeah, Kits and Cubs, please go there and sign that. It really, really does matter, because the only way that it seems that we are going to get some better behavior from our elected officials is by having some type of consequence for so blatantly lying to us in the matter that they are doing. There is so many better things that these four MPs could have been doing with their time than staging a meeting for which nobody else showed up but them to virtue signal that they care more about justice. They are literally committing fraud as they are telling you that they care more about justice and keeping you safe. They're committing fraud against you. They are using your money to manufacture a scenario that does not exist. And then they are telling you they care about you and they care about crime. It would be funny if it wasn't so insulting. I am not impressed with this type of behavior. I am just not. God. Kits and Cubs. And then finally, and this is probably less of a stunt and more of, oh God, business as usual, I guess. Um, yeah. um, Pierre is once again showing that he hasn't learned anything and that there will be no change, there will be no difference. Uh, there was another incident with a journalist, Kits and Cubs, in which Pierre was his normal, charming, lovely,
You get one, then I'll answer your question.
unprickly self. And here, I want you to look at the body language, look at his face, look at his eyes, and then, of course, the tone of voice. And then, as he finishes the clip, look how he turns away from the person he is going out of his way to be unkind to, before he moves on to other people.
When there's things to support, oppose them when necessary. When it comes to the budget, where are you going to land on that? Are you going to support it?
Which budget?
The one November 4th that was announced today.
Do you have a copy you can give me?
I don't.
Okay,
But
when you get one, then I'll answer your question.
are there anything that probably have when it,
I want to reach out through the screen. Or as Kit Jen mentioned, I believe, in a chat when she saw that, Le Dick Royal with smarm sauce. That is just repulsive behavior. That behavior reminds everyone of that crowd size moment. Reminds everyone of that time where he tore a strip, like a really nasty one, on a reporter who was coming in to replace someone who was not even using her usual, not even that reporter's usual beat, I guess, and asked him a very pointed question. And he didn't like that. You can see through the entire time on the expression of his face that he has utter contempt and disdain for the person who is asking this question. Incredible. On the flip side, this happened yesterday. Pierre is back to his old tricks of trying to use the House of Commons question period to make his stunts as well. And but this time, Pierre got the treatment that he so rightfully deserves. And this should be standard operating procedure every time this type of stuff happens.
And the Prime Minister made the appointment of the Parliamentary Budget Officer temporary, so that he could hold a sword over his head and threaten him if he speaks the truth about the financial mess the Prime Minister has made. That's what you remember? You know, to a government that doesn't know how to count, there is nothing more terrifying than a man armed with a calculator. And this Prime Minister wants to silence the Parliamentary Budget Officer from telling the truth about the fiscal mess that he has created under his watch. So will he, Mr. Speaker, legalize math, make the Parliamentary Budget Officer's position permanent, and tell us how big the deficit is?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker.
With respect to consultations on making the Parliamentary Budget Officer's position permanent, I look forward to speaking to the Leader of the Opposition, le chef de bloc,
The Leader of the Bloc Québécois.
of other parties in Parliament, so we have a consensus on that appointment. I welcome that opportunity. We will do it at this. Yes, because this is the new spirit, Mr. Speaker, the new spirit of collaboration that has been put forward by the Minister.
And that, DAMFAM, is how you do it. The Prime Minister laughed at him. He found the theatrics The overwrought melodrama of it. So ridiculous. He couldn't help but laugh. And so did everybody else. And then Pierre didn't like that, clearly, because he was heckling from the other side. It was Pierre, and the Prime Minister was like, yeah, it's the new spirit of cooperation. Implying, get on board, motherfucker. That's just laugh at him, mock him every damn time. These are unserious comments from an unserious person. When is the Prime Minister going to legalize math? Really? Again, on your time, on your dime. You paid for that moment. Again, the lights, the electricity, the heat, the salaries of everybody in that House of Commons at that time, benefits. Not only the MPs, but the pages and the staff. All those papers that are there, all that printing and photocopying and all. You paid for all of that. So Pierre could have a moment where he literally accused the Prime Minister of trying to silence the parliamentary budget officer because the Prime Minister was so scared of what he would say about what the deficit would be, and that the Prime Minister is trying to criminalize math. You pay for this. This doesn't come from party funds, and even if it came from party funds, thanks to the very generous political donation tax credit, you still pay a good percentage of that. But you pay for this. This is what this party thinks is appropriate to do with your money. The money that you give it to represent your views and your interests, even if you are a conservative voter, even if you cannot stand the liberals. Even if you're the type of conservative who sets your alarm clock for 3 o'clock in the morning so that you can make time just to hate liberals once a day, and you schedule it in, do you really think this is an effective use of your money? Do you not think that an opposition party could be doing better to hold the government to account than pretending that they're trying to criminalize math and silence the PBO? Really? They're not working for you. They're laughing at you. They're mocking at you. Mocking at you. They're mocking you. They are taking your money and they are having a grand old time. But they're not serving you. I find it hard to believe that conservative voters voted for this. That they think that they will get anything that they had hoped to get with this type of action. Pierre just wants his clips, man. He doesn't give a fuck about you. It's exhausting. Other stunts. We got Danielle Smith out in Alberta. Saying that she has had enough and is wants to go full, notwithstanding on her rules to oppress transgender children. She's being challenged on it. And therefore, she has decided to send a letter, again, September 17th, the Honorable, addressed to the Honorable Andrew Bachenko, Minister of Tourism and Sport. I'm going to guess that this is the Minister of Tourism and Sport for Alberta. Dear Minister, thank you for your continued service to the people of Alberta and for your leadership within our government. Albertans have entrusted us with a clear mandate to deliver results, strengthen our communities, and build a future rooted in prosperity, opportunity, and responsible governance. Our government was elected to get the job done, and that's exactly what we will do. She's not doing that at all. Your ministry has had great success and accomplished several important milestones that reflect your commitment to serving Albertans. Some of these include launching the Active Communities Initiative to support the renewal, expansion, and construction of small, medium-sized public use sport and recreation facilities across Alberta, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read her fluffing efforts here. These achievements have laid a strong foundation for the work ahead and demonstrate your team's ability to turn vision into action. Under your leadership as Minister of Tourism and Sport, I expect you to work closely with your cabinet and caucus colleagues in the public service through the committee, cabinet, and legislative processes to deliver on the following commitments to support Albertans, including, and then more self-promotion. She has the ensure the full implementation of the Fairness and Safety in Sport Act using all available legal and constitutional means necessary in that list. I direct you to work closely with the public service, including your deputy minister and other senior officials in your ministry, to support the priorities outlined in this letter with the highest standard of professionalism, integrity, and creativity. I also expect you to regularly and proactively reach out to all ministry-related stakeholders, except probably people who are trans, in order to take feedback and identify potential solutions on issues of importance to them, including finding ways our government can reduce burdensome and unnecessary red tape and barriers that hurting their members' ability to grow the economy and improve the quality of life for the Albertans they serve. Yes, let's remove the red tape that prevent transgender children and the family who support them from accessing gender-affirming medical care so that they can improve their quality of life. Oh, not that red tape. Right. Sorry. Forgot. Yes, we're singling out people for extra special treatment these days. I forgot. Together with you and our caucus cabinet colleagues, I look forward to continuing important work we have started and get the job done. So yeah, wants them to use all constitutional availability tools available to ensure the full implementation of the Fairness and Safety in Sport Act. Yeah, that's great. Please, someone bring this to the Supreme Court of Canada so that we can see if there are any reasonable limits to the use of the notwithstanding clause. I would love for someone to argue that denying people the right to be their authentic selves would not be a bridge too far, or things that we have committed to by signing international treaties like the International Convention on the Rights of the Child, for example. Maybe if we signed on to it in an international treaty, that might be something that constitutionally is considered a bridge too far as an application for the notwithstanding clause. According to Nanaimo News Now, Ottawa urges Supreme Court to set limits on how provinces can override the Charter. The federal government is asking the Supreme Court of Canada to set limits around how provincial governments can override the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Ottawa brought forward the request in a factum filed. Let's try that again. Ottawa brought forward the request in a factum filed at the court on Wednesday as part of a landmark case on Quebec's secularism law known as Bill 21. Quebec has invoked the notwithstanding clause of the Charter in its legislation. The clause can be used by provinces to shield legislation from constitutional challenges, but in its filing, the federal government urged the court to set limits on how the notwithstanding clause can be invoked. Thank you. It argued repeated use of the clause amounts to indirectly amending the Constitution and that courts should be able to rule on whether it may result in the irreparable impairment of Canadians' rights. The prolonged impossibility of exercising a right or freedom would in practice be tantamount to denying its very existence, the lawyers warned in the factum submitted Wednesday to the court. In separate arguments filed Wednesday, Ontario and Alberta defended Quebec's preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause when it passed in 2019 secularism law. Bill 21 prohibits public sector workers in positions of authority, including teachers and judges, from wearing religious symbols on the job. It looks like François Legault might want to expand that definition of what is considered workers in positions of authority in the lead up to an election, try to play that ethno-cultural card that he plays so well, even though he is in he's in the toilet polling wise. And of course, no surprising that Ontario and Alberta would be the premiers of Ontario and Alberta would be the first ones rushing in to say, hey, yeah, can't we make discrimination legal just a little? Right? Because, it's not like Ontario hasn't made abusive use of the notwithstanding clause or threatening out before, and neither has Alberta. But yeah, Alberta jumping in there. Yeah, if we can get the court to say it's okay to quash the rights of people who wear a hijab or a kippah or a yarmulke, or a turban, because it's ostentatious, and being a teacher while you wear one of those things automatically curves the spine of all the children. You're proselytizing to them. And therefore, as citizens, even though you pay the same taxes as everybody else, I'm sorry, but you're just not entitled to the full range of employment as everyone else, unless you're willing to deny living your authentic life and being your authentic self. Right? No surprise that Alberta would be first in line to say, oh no, yeah, we need to side with that. I'm not sure if Ontario is siding with it because of not liking people of different races or that type of stuff. Ontario just might be there to preserve the right to use the notwithstanding clause inappropriately against workers who just want to be paid what they're worth. Quote, not quote, but moving back to the article, the two provinces said the clause is an essential part of the Canadian Constitution and should not be undermined by the country's top court. It should also not be undermined by premiers who abuse of it, though, right? Ontario, quote, does not support Quebec's decision to require citizens to remove religious symbols to serve the public or to receive public services, the province's attorney general wrote. But that's a decision for the National Assembly and ultimately the voters of Quebecers to make for themselves. So yes, I also forgot, not only do you not have access to the same range of jobs as everyone else, if you choose to be your authentic self 24/7 and get the privilege of paying the same taxes for that too, but you can't even receive public services. The public services you're paying for with your taxes. But you, because, you're devout, you have extra hoops to jump through if you want to access those services that nobody else does. I still do not understand why nobody's making the taxation argument here at the court. Both provinces say the notwithstanding clause, Section 33 of the Charter, was fundamental to the negotiation of the 1982 Constitution and preserves the sovereignty of provincial legislatures. Quote, Section 33 was a hard-fought and hard-won compromise, Alberta's factum reads. Simply put, there would have been no charter without it. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a legal challenge of Bill 21 brought by several groups that oppose the law, though a date for a hearing has not been set. Some of the appellants are asking the court to restrict the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause or to allow courts to declare a law violates constitutional rights, even if it is shielded by Section 33. The federal government agrees that courts should be able to issue such declarations, which it says would constitute an important source of information for the electorate to judge the merits of a government's decision to invoke the notwithstanding clause. However, Ottawa has not weighed in on the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, despite the fact that Prime Minister Mark Carney has said he opposes it. Ontario and Alberta are supporting Quebec in its opposition to any limits on preemptive use of Section 33, which Ontario says would amount to amending Constitution by the back door. The three provinces, because again, preemptively using Section 33 to suppress rights is not rewriting the Constitution through the back door. They don't have a problem with rewriting the Constitution by the back door. They just have a problem if it's going to be done to prevent them from being able to do it. The three provinces also oppose judicial declarations on right violations, which Alberta says would turn the courts into interest groups vying for the attention of voters in a political forum. Oh, fuck off. Because right now, if the notwithstanding clause is invoked, courts are not allowed to say, well, if the notwithstanding clause, if this was not a matter of notwithstanding clause, this would be a violation of the charter. So that people could at least know that, because it's easy for people to say, oh, you're violating the charter with this by notwithstanding clause. Well, yeah, prove it. Well, you can't prove it because you could take it to the court and the court turns around and says, well, on that thing, since it's moot because the opinion of the court on this subject of whether or not it's unconstitutional is moot because Section 33 has been invoked. So therefore, I will not rule on that. Doesn't let the people know if the government actually is violating your rights. The court should be able to say, well, they invoked Section 33, so I can't reverse it, but I can tell you, yes, this is a violation of your rights, your most fundamental rights, which could then, maybe prompt a backlash movement. But the premier of Alberta, who had problem with a report from the town of Jasper saying that, you guys wanting to take control of the response when you guys weren't the lead over and over again, having everybody having to explain to you that this is not your lane, so you should probably stay in it, delayed stuff, and the response could have been a little more effective had you lose your frickin' mind. So yeah, I'm sure Danielle would love to live in a world in which the courts can say, hey, you're a human rights abuser. We can't stop you, but we're telling everybody you're a human rights abuser. I don't think she would like that very much. It would be a vicious, hyper-partisan attack. And she will not stand for it. And that's why she's in court. Alberta, using your money, Alberta, to argue that if she is going to violate your rights, the courts have no business telling you that she's doing it. Yeah, that's someone I would trust with my rights. Oh boy. There are dozens of interveners in the Supreme Court case, including several provinces. Quebec filed its arguments last month. Since Bill 21 was passed, other provinces have made more frequent use of Section 33. In 2023, the Saskatchewan government invoked the clause to pass a law requiring parental consent for students under 16 to use their preferred name or pronouns at school. Quebec has also invoked Section 33 to pass other legislation, including an overhaul of the province's language law. Last month, the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal ruled that courts can issue declarations on right violations in legislation that invokes the notwithstanding clause. Thank you, Saskatchewan Court of Appeal. On Wednesday, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet accused Carney of using the notwithstanding clause as a pretext to attack Quebec's approach to secularism. Fuck off. Again. I'm sorry. It's Quebec who used the notwithstanding clause. Carney is not using the notwithstanding clause at all. If the federal government's going to intervene, they're going to intervene on the side of not using it. This is the similar tactic that Danielle Smith just did in Alberta, trying to label Thomas Lukasik's push to put a question, citizens' initiative question on the ballot that asks whether or not Alberta should stay in Canada as being a separatist referendum. I can't believe the federal government is using the notwithstanding clause as a weapon. No, they're going to court to prevent it from being used as a weapon. Anyway, Blanchet, not known for not being racist. Don't ask me how I personally know. Quote, if you want to attack the fundamental values of Quebec and the national language of Quebec, say so and do so openly, he said. Why? What? Number one, why? But number two, why is this not what you think what the government is doing? If the government is going to court to argue in court, in public, recorded forever, you can go and read it, the transcript, that they don't stand for it. What is more saying so and doing it openly than going to court and doing it so it could be recorded for posterity forever. Stunts, 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 stunts. All of them, as I keep on repeating, on your time, on your dime. They could be doing a whole bunch of other things to serve you directly. They could be making sure that you get healthcare. They could make sure that your kids get better education. If you're affected by these tariffs, they could do some better job matching programs, job reskilling, job reach. No, they prefer to spend money on legal wild goose chases that are actually PR campaigns for their respective bases and send you the bill. Sticks in my craw. Sticks in my craw. All right, kids and cubs. That's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. As you know, in the description, we said if we had time, we'd talk a little bit more about housing and a couple of other things. There was Elections Canada that came out with a report based on the last election. So hopefully I will have those things for you on Monday if there isn't too much damn news over the course of the weekend, because oh my God, the news is coming in fast. But that's enough for today. So if sharing is caring, please share our content with your peeps and poops and include a little bit of yourself, why it is it resonated with you or what it is that you found interesting about it, because that makes people more likely to read it, or more likely to read it, more likely to click on the link to find out what it's about, because you are influencers in your own circle. Now, kids and cubs, if you happen to be a very, very, very busy beaver or busy bear, and you're out there making your world better, doing democracy, or just taking care of your family, hey, or maybe even taking some time for self-care, and you don't have time to watch us live with the DAMFAM or at your own convenience on our YouTube channel, hey, we got something for you because we are portable. So why don't you just take us with you? Scan this QR code that's appearing here on the screen, or if you are listening, go to podpage.com/the with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you see the subscribe button, click on it. And when we have something fresh off the audio cast bandwidth, it comes directly to your favorite podcast feed. And then we're lightweight and portable. You just pop us in your ears, and there you go. You can take on the day and be informed at the same time. How convenient. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us, well, we sure would love for you to add to our subscriber tally, because, yeah, we're greedy. 24,000 is not enough. We want more. We want more kits. So please listen to the beckoning of Kits Elaine and Kit Cassie and grab your e-surfboard and surf on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where we have not one, not two, but 3 buttons: like, share, and subscribe. Give them a tickle. We ain't fickle. When you do it, we get a little bit of happy when we see our numbers go up, and it also helps us with the algorithm. So we are very, very grateful for all your support. Thank you. If you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, we do incur some financial costs to bring the show to you: internet subscription fees to news services, software that we use to edit and all that type of stuff, things for graphics, you name it. So we do incur some costs, and we would be very grateful for your assistance in helping us with them, as so many of you do regularly enough, and we thank you. We're hoping that this year will be the first one of our 5 seasons in which we actually break even, and that would be really nice. And if we do, it will be because of your help. And you can help us by going to our coffee page. That's ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, or you can scan that QR code that's just appeared up there if you are watching. And there you will find what we affectionately call the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, where you can help us fight the scourge that is dry beaver. Nobody. Well, I guess statistically it might be possible that there's someone out there that likes dry beaver, but I think most of us don't appreciate it. But moist beaver, ooh, that's a happy beaver. So if you would like to do your part to keep your favorite beaver moist, then I would be very grateful to hear a little clinging, some toonies or loonies hit the bottom of that jar. Thank you so much for all of your support. It really does mean the world to us because without you, we could not do what we do. Now, kids and cubs, as we always say on the show, if you are not able to contribute financially, I do not want you to worry about that because the gifts of your participation and attention are the ones that matter the most to us, and we want to hear from you. So please write to us, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about the show, good or bad. Give us some constructive feedback. Give us some compliments. We are very, very, very open to flattery. We do. I, as your queen, particularly like flattery. Or if you have some suggestions for guests, or if you happen to have a home-based business or know somebody who does, who would like a little advertising so that a very group of engaged citizens who really do like to buy Canadian and would jump at the opportunity to do so, would like to hear about what it is that you're doing. Or if you have a community event and you think that advertising on the show could get a couple of extra butts in the seat, why not? We have very, very advantageous rates, particularly for community groups, because we know your budgets are small. So do let us know what you're up to. And if we can help, we will. And we like to help. So, we're amenable to doing it. All right, kids and cubs. Like I said, by the way, forgot to mention truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. If you're buying Canadian and do want to give us a tip for support, please send it as a bank transfer through that. That way, it's a Canadian bank to Canadian bank business transaction. No USCE Tech Bros. Take a cut in the middle. And of course, that means we get all of your donation, which means your donation goes further and we can do more with it and bring you more with it. And we do thank you for that. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, remember, I mentioned it earlier, but sign that petition. And if you're in Alberta, forever-canadian.ca, they need you to sign their drive to make sure that that question gets on the ballot. And of course, they are looking for extra canvassers to do that. And of course, you can find out where those pop-up locations are by going to the site as well. Or you can even make a donation to the organization if you think their work is worthwhile, because it does cost money to organize so many people to be able to get that many signatures by a certain deadline. So that would be very helpful. Remember, the wildfire appeals are still open for our brothers and sisters in Newfoundland and Labrador, but also from Alberta and Manitoba, or Saskatchewan and Manitoba, I'm sorry, who had some wildfire issues over the course of this season. So please donate there if you can. That would be very helpful. And finally, if you are in Newfoundland and Labrador, you have a provincial election that has been declared. So please make a plan to vote. And remember, friends do not let friends vote alone. So make a plan to bring people with you. And of course, check out your advanced voting dates if that's possible so that you can get your vote in early, but make sure that you plan your vote. And of course, find your favorite candidates if you can. And if someone speaks to you, then maybe volunteer, stuff some envelopes, knock on some doors, answer some phones, all that good stuff, plant some signs, right? And if you will want to help democracy take place, maybe call Elections Newfoundland and Labrador and see if they might not need your help at a polling station somehow, right? These are great positions, and it's something everybody should do at least once. It's you just get warm fuzzies when you do. Trust me, it's really worth it. All right, kids and cubs, words of wisdom. My words of wisdom are going to be tune in tomorrow to see our conversation with Olga Nestorova, because you will leave much more informed and with many more insights than you had before you came in. Like I said, it was just it was so pleasant, and she was just so kind and nice that I just can't help but sing her praises. And of course, the depth of her knowledge is also impressive, very impressive. So I'm very proud that we will be showing that tomorrow morning, and I can't wait to read what it is that you will have to say about that, Kits and Cubs. So do join us tomorrow morning. All right. And I guess that means I have to say, Kits and Cubs, that it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And at the count of 3, could I please have you say, Mr. Beaver, cue the cock on 1, 2, 3. Everybody. Oh, you are so wonderful, Kits and Cubs. You made my little beaver heart so happy. How can I say no to you? Especially when you ask so nicely. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, Kits and Cubs. For those of you who are following the Jays in their push to clinch the AL East title, unfortunately, a little bit of a speed bump yesterday with a loss to, I believe, the Tampa Bay Rays. So that put an end to their 2-game winning streak in Tampa. But hey, there are a certain number of games to go to get that magic number. And it seems that the magic number, let's see what it says. Entering Wednesday's action, Toronto was sitting on a magic number of 7 with a magic number of 6 if one accounts for the Blue Jays tiebreaker over the Yankees. Okay, so that's why they were saying 6 in that sense and 7. Okay, I had misunderstood that yesterday when I was talking about it. So because if they end up tied with the Yankees. It seems that they've played 13 times over the season, and the Blue Jays won 8-5. So that technically reduces their magic number by 1. But it seems that when I reported yesterday that it was 6, the real number technically was 7. So there you go. But Toronto did maintain its 4.5 game lead over the Detroit Tigers in the race for the number 1 seed because the Tigers also lost to the Cleveland Guardians last night. So they didn't gain any ground, but didn't lose any ground either. And come on, Blue Jays, let's go. I am admitting that I am a bandwagon here. I don't really watch baseball all that much, but if the Blue Jays are getting close to the series or in the series, I do indeed watch. And congratulations also to our friend Devin Haru. Yesterday was the media race at the World Athletics Championships. And sometimes at the World Swimming Championships, he competes as well. But this was the media race, and it was an 800-meter race. And Devin says he hasn't practiced in 3 years. And so he was huffing and puffing a little bit at the end. But out of all the people who entered, he finished 4th. So good for you. That was a great one. And of course, Evan Dunphy was on the sidelines waiting for him and congratulating him, telling him he had a job well done. Devin says that Evan was his coach for the race. I love that guy. He just participates and brings it home, brings the moment home for us and makes it a lot of fun. So there you go. And 3 of our 200-meter running specialists, Andre DeGrasse, Jerome Blake, And oh God, I had all three names in my head. I am so sorry. The person I am forgetting made it to the semifinals race in the 200 meter. Hopefully, one of them will emerge, or more of them will emerge for the final, and there will be some good stuff waiting for us there. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I got for you. So, like magic, watch me disappear